I always am staring off into the distance because I'm always unsure of whether or not I'm actually live. Um, and that's mostly just me. I'm kind of a silly goose. Uh, but it says I'm live, and it says my stuff is bueno, so good. Uh, welcome, welcome. Uh, just wanted to say good morning. And today we're going to talk about some Drukhari and some of the events that I'm going to be going to, and then some of the stuff that I've been looking at for those events. You can see my list kind of already up here on the table. We're going to kind of walk through that and why I have what I have. In addition to that, we are going to be talking about a new project that I've been working on with a couple buddies and what it is and where we are hoping to go with it. And then outside of that, man, I think that's it. We'll kind of see where we're at, and we'll kind of let everybody who's watching kind of help dictate what's going on. I know my morning streams. I know a lot of people are like, "Man, you got to stream later. I can't miss, or I can never make it," and I apologize for that. My Twitch streams are a way for me to reach the community live, but at the same time, they also give me the ability to get real time content that I can throw over to YouTube. So it's kind of a double edged, that's not the right word. It's kind of a dual platform situation. So that's why. And plus with having kids and wanting to spend time with my family, like this is generally when I get time to do it. So this weekend we have a Highlander tournament coming up. And if you don't know, and I know I've talked about it before, but if you don't know, a Highlander tournament is a specific format and it's really neat. Now, it is an what we would call an off meta format. Now that doesn't mean that you won't get sweaty lists, right? Because you're gonna get still get some comp players and some very good competitive lists, right? And again, like even this tournament that I'm going to, we're gonna have like one of the top orc players, and I don't mean top orc players in the region. I mean one of the top orc players. I'll be playing Drukhari. We're gonna have one of the top Tau players. We're gonna have one of the top Black Templar players. So we are going to have a good mix of players, but also like a good mix of armies, and there's going to be some very good players there. When I say top, I don't mean top 10, but generally a lot of these folks are top 100 in whatever their perspective category is. And when you're talking about thousands of people playing these armies, being top 100 is pretty good, you know. Uh, so it's just something to think about, like when we go to events around here, it's not just a bunch of bros drinking beers and bashing butts. It is to some degree, but at the same time, it's also uh, a very competitive atmosphere. They're really neat. I've been outside of this area for events, and fortunately, when when events are run around here, a lot of people work with me as in how to run them, and so we get a very welcoming atmosphere that's still competitive. So it's pretty cool. Just a little toot my own horn there, but that's not what we're here for. Uh, we're all here to kind of talk about what I'm taking. Now, I know up at the top it says points 2048. I just haven't updated Battle Scribe on my computer yet. I have it updated on my phone, and it's the same list. I'll actually pull it up right here. And I don't know if you can see, but that is actually what it's at, 1998. Same exact list. So it just there's some points adjustments that didn't happen on my computer. I am running 2 patrols. We're going to go through each patrol one at a time. We'll talk about why I have certain things and what the role for those certain things is. And then we're going to talk about how I plan on scoring, what secondaries I plan on taking. And I think that's going to be it. We'll talk about what the. We'll bring up the roster. We won't go through opponents' lists, but we'll bring up the roster and kind of look at what's coming. And then we'll talk about how I might approach some of these different armies. And then after we talk about all that, I've got a really cool project I've been working on. Can't wait to share it with everybody. So that's pretty cool. All right, so running dub patrols. It is a Highlander, so that means I can only take one of each data sheet, with the exception of transports, dedicated transports, and troops. Which I personally like Drukhari troops. I generally like troops. Period. I think that a lot of times Army's troops are undervalued and underrated, and I think it's because using troops effectively is hard, right? So a lot of people don't want to do things that are hard, and I'm not making fun of them. Like, if you're playing this game, there's a good chance you just want to do what's going to be easy, and there's nothing wrong with that, And I just had this talk with Proxy Hammer, and he's a gentleman that does YouTube videos, very very knowledgeable on his craft worlds. And I was telling him, hey man, I think Eldar troops are undervalued and underrated, and the reason they are undervalued and underrated is because they tend to get outperformed by whatever elite unit does the same thing they do, right? That doesn't mean they're bad, but if you're looking at striking scorpions and you're looking at storm guardians and you're thinking that they effectively fill the same role, you're going to take striking scorpions over storm guardians, and that's fine. So again, and that's because the damage output of striking scorpions is a lot higher, so it's easier. And that's not a knock on anybody. It's just a different approach to the game. I prefer to bring troops because I can generally get some more bodies, some more units, and then that gives me some more throwaway units that I can just kind of, if they die, I'm not crippled, right? So it's just a different approach to the game. There's nothing right about it. There's nothing wrong about it. It's just a different mindset and approach. Okay, so I am taking a patrol of Cabal, which is actually not normally what I would run in Drukhari. But I need shooting right now. Now I have been able to take a very melee centric list, and honestly, it's when I play orcs. That's what I play. Orc shooting has generally been so garbage this edition, outside of that first list that came out before the aircraft nerf. Orc shooting has been so garbage this edition that I generally just don't bring it. There's no point. I'm just wasting dice, right? So because of that, I do tend to play very melee centric lists. Historically, I've tried to create very balanced lists because I see the need for shooting and melee, and really I'd prefer that I have both in one unit, right? So like if I could have Mega Knobs, I'd rather give them some kind of gun and a claw than just two saws. It's just, again, Scorches are very expensive. Armor of Contempt made them feel very bad. We're in a different meta, and I understand that. I'm just kind of giving you the background. Um, and I struggled with this army when I first got into it again, because I dabbled with them at the beginning of the year. Mostly it's just like a couple one-off games, had some fun, and then the fire happened. I didn't have any of my elves anyway, and then I'm getting back into them at the request of my daughter. So typically I would run a lot of racks and witches, and my shooting would be coming from some scourges and some talos. I have found that right now, because of who I'm playing against locally, I I need the shooting, right? Um, it's just a thing that I need to take pressure off of those melee units so that they are better able to get to where they need to go, because our local community even has kind of shifted to a bit more shooting, and a lot of it stems around like we have a local Tau player who's very very good, right? Uh, we have a local Votan player who's getting pretty heckin' good with that army. So we've got these shooting units and shooting armies. So it's one of those where if I play only melee, as soon as I send things out, they're gonna die. So I need some kind of shooting presence to kind of keep them at bay. So I've decided to bring a detachment of Cabalites. Uh, Sorry for being so verbose. This is just who I am. A detachment of Cabalites, right? And I just have the Archon. Now he does have the over or splinter genius upgrade, which is once per battle he can fight twice at the end of the fight phase. I always forget that that even exists. That just is what it is. It's one of those where I just forget that he even does it. He's simply there to give me Trueborn is how I look at him. He doesn't have a relic. He doesn't have a warlord trait. He is my warlord. He does have a venom blade, which I think is just the neg 1 rend poison 2. Um, so before we get into that, I guess I should have told you what my. So I took the Toxin Crafter's All Consuming. I know the auto pick is Blackheart. We've talked about it. They've got a very good strat. Uh, they've got very good a lot of things. But with my Cabal, it's very specifically there to give me shooting. And I just thought, okay, what can I do to make their shooting better? Right? So what I did was I took each time a model with this obsession makes an attack with a poison weapon, an unmodified hit roll of 6, change the attack's poison ability to poison 2 plus. Um, so and that counts for melee. So his venom blade, right, is going to be hitting on 2s. Okay, sorry, my mind just went blank. And they re-roll wound rolls of 1, not hit rolls of 1. Uh, I've been misplaying that for 2 games, and honestly, I don't think it changes literally anything. My hit rolls become a little bit less efficient, but my wound rolls become more efficient. So that's my mistake. I'll make sure I'm doing that properly. But each time a model with this obsession makes an attack with a poison weapon, a hit roll of 6 is poison 2, and then you re-roll wound rolls of 1 with poison weapons. So like with the Venom Blade, right? This homeboy will do 5 attacks, hitting on 2s, and then he's just always going to wound on 2s, but he re-rolls wound rolls of 1 inherently, which is really good, right? Even though it's only neg 1, remember, wound rolls of 6 are an additional AP because of Blade Artist. So I felt like that was a good pick, and honestly, if I'd have had the extra points, I'd put the Agonizers on all my Cabalite Sergeants, but I didn't have the points for that. And then I got Big Dick Drazar. That's just what we call him locally. It's not the most appropriate term. Obviously, this guy's a beast. He fights twice every phase. The thing to remember about Drazar is that he fights twice in whatever priority he's in. So he's got the old Berserker rules. So if he charges, he gets to fight twice at priority 1. So you can actually declare him to fight and then declare him to fight. And that's something to keep in mind because if somebody does not interrupt him, he's probably just shitting on whatever he touches because he gets 5 base attacks at strength, I think it's 7. Yeah, strength 6. Strength 6, neg 3, 3 damage, plus 1 to wound. Or he gets 7 attacks at strength 5, neg 3, 2 damage, and plus 1 to wound. And the plus 1 to wound comes from. Oops. The plus 1 to wound comes from this right here. While a friendly incubi unit is within 6 inches of this model, add 1 to the attack's wound roll. He has the incubi keyword, so he gives himself his own aura. And he also does the roll 2d6 into leadership to make something fight last. I've only had that be relevant once or twice, but I tell you what, the one time it was relevant recently was super clutch. I forget what it was I was fighting, but I rolled like boxcars on it and was like, oh my god, I didn't need this to happen, but I'm super glad it did. All right, so I've got my Trueborn, right? And we've got the Splinter Rifle, and that's just, again, because I want a lot of poison, right? We've got seven Cabalites, 6 plus the Sybarite, which is just the Sergeant. And they have Splinter rifles. We have 1 Splinter cannon, and that's because they're going to be hitting on 2s, right? They're just hitting on 2s all the time. You can't modify it. And then in addition to that, we've got 2 blasters, and that's just to give me some anti-tank shooting. It's not going to be bad. And then again, all these poison weapons, right, are going to be re-rolling wound rolls of 1, not hit rolls, is important. Got to remember that. Let me go back up to Toxin Crafters. Oh no. I'm just a clown. And that's with the poison weapons. Yep. So all these two blasters are going to hit on 2s, and then they're going to be strength 8, neg 4, d6 damage. The splinter cannons are going to hit on 2s. Hit rolls of 6 are going to be poison 2, and then they're going to reroll wound rolls of 1. So, and they're neg 1, 2 damage. It's just like a shuriken cannon for the most part. So that's a unit of Trueborn. They're going to be in a Raider. We're going to get into my transports last, and we're going to explain why I have them set up the way that I do. And then we have a brick of 16 Cabalites, okay? And it's literally just 13 splinter rifles and then 3 blasters. And that's, again, just so I have some more of that anti-tank shooting. So that's going to be three shots, strength 8, neg 4, d6, and then within rapid fire range, it's going to be 26 splinter shots. So I'm hitting on 3s. I'll be wounding on 4s, re-rolling 1s, and hit rolls of 6 will be poison 2. So what this does is this gives me 2 big bricks of units that have a high volume of dice that can just, it'll do damage, right? Unless you're a vehicle. But let's say I go into a demon's army. They're not Titanic, so my poison works into them. And I can just do volume. If I hit, even if it's a Lord of Change, we call it the Thunder Chicken. Even if we hit the Thunder Chicken, right? If I shoot one of these, let's say I shoot the big brick into him. He gets 26 shots hitting on 3s. Let's get the old calculator out. I can do this in my head. I don't feel like it. I've only had one coffee so far this morning. So we got 26. We're going to hit 0.66 times, which is going to be 17 hits. 3 of those are going to average 6s, which means I'm going to average 3 poison 2s, which takes me down to 14, and then the rest of them will wound 50%, right? So I'm going to average 7 wounds, and I'm going to get 3 on the 2s on average because it's 2s re-rolling 1s. So I'm going to get 7 2s, or 7 wounds plus 3 more is 10 wounds, plus re-rolling my other 3 1s, which I'll probably get 11 wounds on him, which means on average I'm going to do roughly 3 damage, to a 3-up save. It doesn't sound like a lot, but being able to chip that on something with a 3-up save that you just cannot shift ever means I can consistently put damage on it, which is going to make that player respect it, right? It's not like the hammerhead, right? Where it's like I do one shot, but if it gets through, or the hecaton gun, I do one shot, but if it gets through, you're taking damage because the demon saves you still get against those. So it's one of those where I'm just relying on volume, right? And my splinter cannons will do 2 damage. I don't have any in this unit, but in the other unit I do. And then let's see, Cabalite Warriors, blah, 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 blah. And then I have a unit of Incubi, pretty standard. It's only 5. I would prefer to run 10, but I had to cut them down for this list simply to fit in a few other things. In this detachment, I do have a Ravager. It does have 3 Dark Lances, so that gives me 3 more like really hard-hitting guns to throw. So in that detachment, I have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 Strength 8, Neg 4 dice that I get to throw. The blasters aren't exceptionally long range, but that's okay. I'm closing that gap anyway, is kind of where I'm at with it. And then I do have a Venom, and in the Venom is going to be Drazar and the 5 Incubi. And then the Venom's going to have all the upgrades. So it gets the Grizzly trophies and the chain snare. So it's going to make 6 attacks, strength 6, neg 1, 1 damage. And then it's got the -2 leadership aura, but it has the 2 splinter cannons. So it's going to do 6 splinter cannon shots, right? And again, hit rolls of 6 are poison 2. So I'm on average going to hit 4 times, and one of them will be poison 2. And then it's going to be 4s re-rolling 1s and then 1, 2 re-rolling 1s. So it's one of those where I just took a lot of poison weapons. The other Cabal I considered was a custom, where I combined 2 where your hit rolls of 6 explode, and then your wound rolls of 6 are an additional AP. And I just kind of settled on this one. I don't know that it's right or wrong. I just kind of liked it also, and I didn't. It basically just kind of flipped a coin. My other patrol, right, is going to be Cursed Blade, and that is +1 strength. and then my saves of a 6 are a mortal wound back to you in the fight phase. It's only against melee attacks. Let me rephrase. I love Cursed Blade. I have Strength 5 Witches, and it feels amazing, right? I just love them. Now, I do have the Succubus. She does have a Warlord trait and a Relic. Very standard loadout to me. She's got Show Stealer, so she can consolidate 6 inches in any direction. And then she's got Adrenalite, so she gets a bonus attack. So she's going to swing 10 attacks on the charge. Sorry, my brain again just went blank. She's going to swing 10 attacks on the charge with her oh, I've got to give her her relic. Let me do that real quick. And then Succubus. Because she's got relic, and then she should have tolerated ambition, which gives her the warlord trait. We're giving her the triptych whip, and then precision blows. There we go. All right, so here we go. Maybe. There we go. So she's going to swing 10 attacks, right? Because the triptych whip gives her 3 additional attacks, so she's got 9 base plus 1 on the charge. And their strength user neg 3 2 damage and their poison 2. But then what does show steal or precision blows? Hit rolls of 6 do a number of mortal wounds equal to the damage and the attack sequence ends. It's hilarious. The only other loadout I found for her that I enjoy is Cult of Strife, but I want to say it was all in the books that just got like nixed, so I can't even run it anymore, so it doesn't matter. So she'll swing 10 attacks, poison 2, and then neg 3 2 damage. So again, into most things she's going to be really good. And then because her hit rolls of 6 are 2 mortals and the attack sequence ends, I can still swing her into vehicles, and if I roll spicy enough, I'm going to do just like a bucket of damage. And I'm basically going to average 3 mortals is the actual average of the math, but I'm probably doing 4 every time she swings on average. So it's pretty spicy. I also need to email the TO and let him know that I forgot to add any relics and warlord traits. I don't think it's going to be an issue. He is aware that this is how I run it, and really most of the community is. If not, then she's not getting anything, and it's funny, and I just start with 6 command points, and that's okay too. Right. We've got 1 unit of Blood Brides. I don't know that they're worth the points upgrade. They do have better leadership. And then they do have that says Invulnerabe. Anyway, they have better leadership, and they have Grave Lotus, so they're gonna be strength 5 because Cursed Blade gives them +1 strength, and then the Grave Lotus gives them +1 strength. The Blood Brides have 3 attacks, but their weapon gives them an additional attack, and that's all I gave them was the Hecatari Blade. So this 10 model unit is going to swing 40 dice that hits on 2s, and then their strength 5, so I'm wounding almost all infantry on 3s for the most part. And then if I roll any kind of saves of a 6 in the fight phase, it's a mortal back to you. Has been hilarious. Played 1 game against a Craft Worlds player, and I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say I beat him. Well, I'm not going to sit here and say that this interaction wasn't because of dice, because it absolutely was. His striking scorpions charged into my succubus and my blood brides, and he dedicated only his sergeant into my succubus, right? And honestly, his dice just kind of shit the bed. And then he put maybe like 5 wounds on her, and she has a 4-up invuln. And then in his 5 out of his 5 wounds, I rolled like 3 or 4 saves of a 6, and then failed 1 save. So she took 2 damage, or yeah, 2 damage because it was a 2 damage weapon. But then he also just picked up 4 models because of my saves. So it's one of those where it's not super relevant until it is, and it's kind of funny. And then I've got 2 5 model units of witches. Witches. fine. Like, they're great. I love them. And they're just kind of like on foot backfield objective holders. Can advance and charge turn 2. So if you get a little too close, I can send them into something to chip damage. I do have some mandrakes. I'm kind of mixed on them. It's more of a utility pick for me. Once per battle, they can be removed from the battlefield and then put back anywhere on the battlefield more than 9 inches away from enemy models. So basically, they just go into deep strike, and then in my next movement phase, they can come down. So they're more of a utility pick if I feel like I need like RND, or if I need to like teleport them to grab an objective, something like that. And then they can also forward deploy. So if I'm going against an army that relies on pre-game moves or like turn 1 deep strikes like drop pods or something, it lets me screen my important units. Excuse me. They do have a 5-up invuln, and they are -1 to hit. So they're not like amazingly resilient, but they do stay on the table a bit longer than most things. And then their gun isn't terrible. It's 2 shots, strength 4, neg 1, 1 damage, but wounds of 6 do immortal in addition to. And then their melee is basically the same profile, strength 4, neg 1, 1 damage. So again, they're not like bonkers good, but they're a solid utility pick. I do have 10 Hellions, and this, I honestly, I just love these things. They do a lot of attacks. They're just witches, right? So they're just 3 attacks each. I gave them Adrenalite, so they just have the Shock Assault. They get an additional attack on the charge because they fight at Strength 5 already, because they're Strength 4 for being a Cursed Blade, and then their melee weapon is +1 neg 1 2 damage. So they just a lot of attacks. They move 14 inches. They're real good. I've got 5 Scourges. Again, this is kind of a utility pick. It's also just a lot of dice. Each one's got a shredder, so it's 4d6 shots at strength 6, neg 1, 1 damage. So again, they can inherently deep strike, and then they move 12 or 14 and fly. So it's one of those where this is a utility pick more than it is anything else, but they do a lot of volume, and because they do a lot of volume, it enables me to okay, there we go. My mouse decided it didn't want a mouse. Because they do a lot of volume, they can be very threatening. You know, again, if I shoot them into Marines, if each one averages 3 shots each, that's 12 shots, which is 8 hits, which is like 5 wounds. And yeah, it's only neg 1, but they'll kill a couple bodies, and that's all I need them to do. And then my transports outside the Venom, right? I have 2 Raiders, one for the Blood Brides, one for the Trueborn. And the Trueborn has all the upgrades outside of the... Here. It doesn't have the grenade launcher, and it doesn't have Shock Prow. I just think Shock Prow is a waste of points. I have to spend 5 points to be able to use a command point to have a 4-up do D3 mortals. And it's just like, why? I'll save my 5 points and spend them elsewhere for something that's more utility. Like, I'm not going to put a 5-point upgrade on this model so I can have a 50% chance to do mortal wounds after spending a command point. Like, if it were a 2-up like ramming speed, I'd consider it. But because it's a 4-up, I'm not messing with it. The Phantasm grenade launcher, I don't think it's bad, especially because I have the Grizzly trophies on it. It's just one of those where, again, that's another 5 points. So between the two of these, I can save 20 points and put that somewhere else, right? Which is power swords on my witches, things like that. I did give it the descent. Both of them have the disintegrator cannon, so they both just do 3 shots, strength 5, neg 3, 2 damage. And really, that was a points issue. I'm at 1998, I believe it was, and I just needed to kind of shave things off. And I was like, okay, do I want 1 Dark Lance that never seems to do anything, or would I rather have 3 disintegrator cannon shots that may actually do a thing at some point? And the other one's the same thing. It just doesn't have the splinter racks. So obviously the one for the Kabalites has the splinter racks, so they have rapid fire the whole time. And then the other one's for the witches, because they don't need rapid fire. They just have pistol weapons. And then this handsome devil right here, the old Tantalussi, as we say. And I'll get into why these are in my witch detachment in a minute. I love this stupid thing. I did a whole video on it. I think it's great. I think it's a solid unit. I don't know if it's like good, but I think it's fun, and I think it keeps people on their toes. Okay, we'll go through it briefly. Like I said, I did a whole video on it. It's on my YouTube channel. You can check it out. First of all, when it explodes, right, it does D6 mortal wounds, which whatever. Distance is always measured to and from the hull. Sure, it is open topped. So this is where my 16 cabalites are going because it has a transport capacity of 16. So my 16 cabalites go in here, and then because Drukhari have a deep strike CP stratagem, I can put it in deep strike if I want to. So it's open topped, which is cool. So that means I can get 16 cabalites shooting out of it. And honestly, I'm only deep striking it into one or two armies. For the most part, I'm not going to deep strike it. But into Tau, I basically have to, or I'm just going to pick it up before I get to do anything with it most games, unless we just have massive terrain features that I can hide behind. And into Votan too. Although Votan, a little bit less likely because they're a little bit shorter range. It's going to be very mission dependent. All right, so Scything Charge. So it gets the shock prow ability baked in, and it's on a 4-up, do a D3 mortal wounds. Again, this is one of those abilities that I just kind of always forget is there. I don't know that I've ever used it. And then it auto advances 12 inches. Yep. And this is your 16. And then it has a 5-up against ranged weapons. So it's basically just a big raider. And if you've ever seen the model, that's what it looks like. It looks like two raiders, like side by side. It moves 16 inches. It has a weapon skill of 4, which is actually pretty good because it does have a solid melee profile, right? Because it's strength 7. And then it's got a ballistic skill of 3, strength 7, T7. It's like the only T7 thing in this codex now that the Chronos and the Talos have been nerfed, right? They lost core, so they can't get the +1 toughness from the homunculus. It does have 18 wounds. Again, 18 wounds is the threshold where obscuring doesn't affect you. And I see people kind of mess that up a lot. But basically, all that means is that no matter where my model is on the table, if your models can see it, your models can shoot it if they have range. I've seen some people mess it up. They think it means that I can shoot at it even if they can't see it. That is not the case. It says in the core rule books you have to have line of sight to be able to target anything with a gun, and that's just how it works. It is leadership 7, which generally doesn't matter. In its top bracket, it does get 6 attacks, right? And it's strength 7, neg 2, 2 damage. And then it has 2 pulse disintegrators, which means it's got 12 shots at strength 8, neg 3, 2 damage. So this is a very solid platform, right? It throws 12 dice. They're 2 damage each, so they're not amazing. But I'm not going to complain. And they're neg 3, so again, like if I shoot a Dreadnought, I'm only doing 1 damage, but it's a 6-up for 1 damage, right? And then I can still advance and shoot it if I want to. Yeah, I'm hitting on 4s, but that allows me to move 28 inches, shoot, and charge as long as it's turn 2. So it's one of those where this thing gets a little spicy. Now, all these transports are in my witch cult for a specific reason. That reason is this model gets +1 strength. So it's now strength 8, neg 3 or neg 2, 2 damage. So now it's wounding you on 2s if you're a Marine, 5-up or die. It's now ignoring ramshackle, all your vehicles take 2 damage from it. So it's now wounding your, well, not anymore because I think they FAQ'd it, but it's now wounding your T8 vehicles. I was going to say Land Raider, but I think they changed all the Chaos Land Raiders to basically be T9. But it's now wounding any T8 vehicle on 4, so like your Repulsor, Executioner, stuff like that. So this thing is now like a little silly, right? That jump from 7 to 8 is a big jump. And then in addition, in the fight phase, my saving throws of 6 are a mortal wound back to you. So really what I like to do, and to be fair, I haven't gotten to because it usually dies like the first turn it's on the table, and that's fair. But it soaks a lot of shooting because I can make it -1 to hit. It's got a 5-up invul and it's got a 3-up base save, so it does take quite a bit of shooting to kill it. But where it really shines is like if I can get it into even just like assault intercessors or regular intercessors or something like that, like if I can advance and charge a backfield soft target, if it doesn't mulch that backfield soft target, I'm just fishing for sixes on my save to do more damage to you. That's all I'm doing. So that's a big part of why that's there. Same with the Raiders, right? Like I expect those to stay or get into combat, and then they also become strength 8 because these are base strength 6, but their melee weapon is +1 is 7, and then the witch cult is +1 is 8. Yeah, it's only 1 damage, but it's still strength 8. So again, you're wounding a lot of infantry on 2s to include Marines. And that was a big part of it. But then again, if I roll that spicy 6, I'm just doing mortals back to you. And with the Tantalus having 18 wounds, like I'm probably going to get some 6s if I can hit the right target. If I'm hitting something that requires on spamming a high volume of 1 damage dice, like some striking scorpions or even howling banshees, like, I'm probably getting some 6s. Even if I lose the model, I'm still going to statistically kill some of yours just because you attacked me. So it's kind of my thought process. That coupled with the fact that them being inside the other detachment gets them literally nothing, right? Because the detachment I'm running only benefits poison weapons, and you can't give these poison weapons. So there's no poison weapons to be had. And so like that just is what it is. Um, Secondaries I plan on taking. Let's go ahead and minimize this sweet petunia, as they say. Nobody says that. That's okay. Nephilim, Wahapedia. I mean, no, I'm not on this site. And also, what is going on? My phone be going ham. Okay. I don't want to know what that means. Sorry about that. This thing has been like vibrating nonstop, and I finally had to just be like, okay, let's just get rid of it. All right, so we need secondaries, right? Secondaries. Recover the relics. Breeding's hard. There we go. We don't need Night Lords or that. We need. All right, so I think most games. So take them alive. I'm only taking this some games. It just depends on who I'm playing against. And the reason is because it's character or monster unit, and it's in melee, right? You get 3 points for killing a character or monster in melee, and you score 1 point for every other unit that dies in melee. So it has to be in melee, and you're capped at 5 per battle round. I've scored pretty well on this. I usually get about 8 to 10 on it. It's not great. It just depends on if I can get those characters isolated and slam into them. Split a couple games with our resident Tau player this past week, and one of the differences was between the games was I was able to catch those commanders, right? I was able to catch those commanders and just like killed one in melee with Drazar, and that was 3 points. Boom. And then the other one I killed, it was in melee, but it wasn't with Drazar. I don't remember what it was with. All right, Beast for the arenas. I'm just never gonna take unless I'm playing against somebody who just has a bunch of monster cavalry or beast. So like say so maybe if I hit a specific demons list, but it's only scoreable by your witch cult. So again, like this one's basically trash. Uh it and I hate saying that because I'm all for like flavorful and fluffy objectives, but they also have to be attainable. Like I don't expect to score 15 out of my secondaries, like my faction specific ones, But like this is only usable, right, against like 2 armies in the game. So it's like, why even have it? And you have to have enough Witch Cult to score it. So it's kind of a weird one. Uh, but take them alive is a good solid pick, or assassinate. And again, one of these two, and it just depends on A, how many characters they have, and B, what their characters are like. If I'm playing a CSM player and they've just got very melee centric characters, I'm probably taking Take Them Alive. And I'm just going to try and, you know, they're coming to me anyway, so I just have to get them isolated and kill them in melee to score points. Obviously, if I'm seeing Abaddon, that might change my pick because generally I just like walk away from him. Uh, it's a silly data sheet. It is absolutely just an absurd data sheet. And it's one of those where it's like I just ignore him then. Like, cool, you can just be over there. I'll be somewhere else. I'm faster than you. And obviously, like enemy specific or opponent specific, assassinate and bring it down. No Mercy, No Respite. Fear and Terror, I will generally not take, again, unless I know my opponent strategy predicates on falling back, because I don't have anything that forces you to fail in action. Excuse me. Uh, and again, morale, things that are predicated around morale are only good if you like heavily spec into them, and I'm not heavily spec'd into them. So I generally don't take Fear and Terror, right? And again, no prisoners is just dependent on my opponent, and I'll never take grind with any kind of elf army. Just won't do it. Obviously, Abhor the Witch if I slam into something that has wizards. Oh, excuse me, like if I hit Grey Knights or if I hit T-Suns or even some Craft Worlds builds, it's a good pick. Herd the Prey I take every game. And I think I've only scored less than 8 points on it once, and I think most of my games are about 10. It's a great secondary if you learn how to play it. There's some missions where it's a lot harder, like your Data Scry salvage, or your missions where you have like multiple, where you're in table quarters for deployment as opposed to like longboard, shortboard. Uh, but even then, it's definitely doable if you lean into it super hard and you just expect to score 2 points a round. If you temper your expectations to 2 points a round, you're never going to be disappointed. You're just going to be happy if you score more. Engage, I won't do personally because I feel like, especially with elves, I'm just sending units to die. And because I have to be able to play that trading game, I can't just send units to their death. Behind enemy lines, maybe. I just feel like Herd the Prey is such a better pick, but again, it's going to be opponent dependent. If I'm playing somebody who's just going to try to trade me deployment zones, I might consider Behind Enemy Lines instead. Banners I take a lot, actually, even though I don't spend a lot of time sitting. And a lot of it just is so I can force you to move places, right? Because if I can get 2 banners up and you're a turtle army, I can at least score points between Herd the Prey and banners and force you to try to come out and prevent my scoring. And that's kind of the approach there, is if I can Herd the Prey and banners to force a more turtley army to interact with me, that's a win for me. And then R&D is my alternate for Raise the Banners. If I feel like I can't do banners well, I'm going to take R&D simply because I've got the Mandrakes and I've got the Scourges, so I've got 2 units that can either teleport or deep strike to score some of the harder quarters, and then I've got 2 5-mans of Witches and a few other things that I can kind of drop down and do stuff with, and that's kind of where that one's at. So my auto takes are Herd the Prey, and then either Raise the Banners or R&D. It just depends on the mission and the opponent, and then my alternates would be Take Them Alive or Assassinate, depending on the build. And then maybe Fear and Terror or No Prisoners, again, depending on my opponent. So that's where I'm at. And obviously Abhor the Witch if I'm hitting something where I can just farm points for Abhor the Witch. Uh, if I'm playing T-Suns or Grey Knights and they've got like 3 characters, there's a good chance I'm either taking Assassinate and Abhor the Witch just so I can double dip those points, or take them alive and abhor the witch. Again, just so I can double dip those points. Because if I take them alive, right, it's 3 points for every character I kill in melee, but then it's 3 points for every character I kill for Abhor the Witch. So killing one character scores me 6 victory points. So it's one of those where I kind of look at, can I double dip? Can I not double dip? And then really what that also does is if my opponent knows that I'm scoring 6 points for killing one of their characters, there's a lot of times where that will cause them to be a bit more timid, and it takes some of their characters out of the game then, which is still, to me, just kind of a win. All right, so we talked about secondaries. We talked about Drukhari, right? And we talked about that. So the hot blah, 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 uh, the what you call it, events. There we go. We've got a lot of events jam packed into a small amount of time, right? I've got the Highlander event that I'm going to at 2 days, and then I've got a league that I'm participating in. And it's going to be a pretty comp league, and it's going to run Arcs of Omen, so that's going to be pretty neat. I'll be running Drukhari for that. I don't know how I'm going to do with that. We're going to find out. Um, and that's roughly 20 people also. And then at the end of February, I'm running a tournament that I may also have to play in, simply because I'll be playing Ringer for that one if we have an odd number. So it's one of those where I'm not playing, but I'm playing. But I am still there. So that's in February. And then at the beginning of the March, I've got a GT that I'm going to. And so it's one of those where I've just got so many events. And then at the end of March, I'm working Adepticon for Games Workshop. So like my schedule. Oh, and there's February 11th. I have a tournament that I'm going to that has about 20 participants also. So it's just going to be a very dense couple months here. I will do my best to keep the video content and the streaming going. We'll do some tournament recaps. We'll do some pictures. I'm going to make sure I do a better job of taking pictures and keeping track of what I do. So, on top of that, I told everybody we're going to be streaming a second day here pretty soon. That stream is a game. Uh, it is as of yet unnamed. We have been calling it Greyloch Battles. Greyloch because that is the world name, and then Battles because it is a battle game. We may end up changing that name. It is a kind of like a love project, um, a project of the heart. I'm a huge fan of like rank and file fantasy games. I just haven't played any that have caught my attention since the old Warhammer Fantasy. And what it is a game that uses an existing rule system called Hounds of War, and it's kind of like a Build-A-Bear or a GURPS style game where you get a mini and you just like they have a point-based system and you have to build your minis rules based off of that point-based system. The only issue is that there's no standardized play, right? So like every time you play, you have to like make your rules. So what I'm doing is creating a fantasy setting for it with a couple people, and we're making like an actual army book and all these other things. It is based off of those rules, but it is not going to be just a copy paste of those rules. There's going to be some tweaks to make it fit and feel better for a rank and file game. It's a super neat system. Paul, the guy who wrote the book, super nice dude. Hounds of War, check it out. It's on Amazon. It's a great game, a lot of fun. Um, we are going to be doing that, and what you're going to be seeing is you're going to be seeing the battles that are going to be used for lore and world building. And so like as we do our campaigns, and it's going to be a very much more narrative focused situation, and as we build our world and build our rules, everybody that gets to see it gets to understand how the game interacts, and they get to kind of like see the game take shape as we go. And then once it's completely written, it'll probably be a like an add-on for Patreon patrons. You'll just get a digital copy of Battles for Greylock once it's completed on Patreon. So just something to kind of keep in mind and look forward to if you like it and you think it looks fun. Um, Definitely check it out. When we use models, I'll tell you what models we are using, but I'll try to also reference other models you could get that would be good proxies or stand-ins, because we are not a models company. We are working on rules. So it's the exact opposite mantra of another company that we all know and love. So outside of that, I think we're good for today. Had about an hour stream. Wanted to talk about the Drukhari list. Wanted to talk about all that. And I appreciate everybody kind of hanging out with me and listening. This video will be up on YouTube by the end of the day. So if you missed it, feel free to watch it. Thanks.